I never imagined that moving into Sycamore Heights would feel like stepping into a Cold War. Only the battlefield was my own backyard, and the enemy wore a neatly pressed polo shirt with the HOA logo embroidered on the chest. From the moment we arrived 6 months ago, it was clear that Karen Winters, the HOA president, ran this neighborhood like a tightly wound ship. Her identity seemed inseparable from the 16-page rulebook she carried around like it was a constitution. Our welcome basket from the Homeowners Association had more printed regulations than cookies. Just a friendly reminder to review our community guidelines. The note read, that guideline packet turned out to be a manifesto of restrictions, from trash can positioning to which shades of beige were permitted for house exteriors. Still, the area was beautiful. Great schools, peaceful streets. We were willing to follow the rules, within reason. The real trouble started when I decided to replace our aging fence. I followed every requirement, filled out the paperwork, submitted the plans, waited the 30-day approval window, and even showed Karen the exact fencing materials I planned to use. "This looks fine," she said with one of those tight smiles that don't quite reach the eyes. "Just make sure it's exactly as described in your application." I assured her it would be. That weekend, I got to work. 3 days into the project, I was mid-measurement when I noticed a shadow cast across the lawn. I looked up to see Karen, arms crossed, standing in her usual khaki pants, an HOA polo, her expression unreadable. "Excuse me," she said sweetly, but that fake sweetness that sets off every alarm bell. "I need to talk to you about this fence. It looks like it's 6 inches taller than what was approved." I stood up and took a breath. "Actually, Karen, it's exactly 4 feet tall, just like I submitted in the plans. I can grab the paperwork if you'd like to check it again." Her smile faltered, just for a split second before she recovered. "Well, the board has some concerns. Several neighbors have complained it blocks their view of the common area." I glanced around at the nearby houses, none of which even face a common area, thanks to the way our cul-de-sac was laid out. Her complaint was baseless, and we both knew it. "I'd be happy to address any official concerns at the next HOA meeting," I said calmly. "But for now, I'm going to continue with the project, just as approved." Her face flushed slightly. She mumbled something about further review and walked off, already dialing her phone, likely to rally her usual crew. What Karen didn't know was that after our first run-in, over the color of our mailbox of all things, I had quietly installed a full security system for HD cameras, full cloud backup. After 15 years working in corporate litigation, I've learned the value of documentation. The following week, the passive-aggressive harassment escalated. First, a notice about my son's basketball hoop being visible from the street. Then, a warning about leaving the garage door open for extended periods while I worked on my car. Each time, I responded with polite, professional emails, quoting the exact HOA rules that supported my actions, and I always CC'd the entire board. Karen's replies grew shorter, sharper, the tone more clipped with each exchange. Then came the breaking point. It was a quiet Saturday afternoon in early summer. My wife and kids were out visiting her parents, and I was enjoying the rare silence by getting some gardening done in the backyard, when I heard the unmistakable sound of someone clearing their throat behind me. The sound of someone clearing their throat behind me made me pause mid-dig and turn around. There stood Karen, arms tightly crossed, flanked by 2 HOA board members who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. One kept glancing at his shoes. The other shifted uncomfortably under the weight of the silence. "We need to talk about your continued violations," Karen announced, her voice raised just enough to make sure anyone within earshot could hear. It was performative, and I could tell she was putting on a show. She held a folder in one hand, already poised like a prosecutor in a courtroom. "The board has voted to issue a final warning before proceeding with fines and possible legal action." I took off my gardening gloves slowly, forcing myself to stay calm. "What violations are we talking about, exactly?" The man beside her, Dave, I think his name was, nervously adjusted his glasses and avoided eye contact. Karen opened the folder and started reading off the list like it was gospel. Unauthorized landscaping changes, fence height exceeding regulation, unapproved exterior fixtures, and creating a noise disturbance with power tools outside permitted hours. She shut the folder with a dramatic snap. We have photographic evidence of every single one. I almost laughed, but held it in. Instead, I gave her a measured smile. Karen, I've documented every step of our upgrades and modifications. The landscaping plan was approved back in March. The fence is exactly the height listed on the application. The exterior lights meet the wattage and placement guidelines. And I've never once used power tools outside the approved hours. 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. on weekdays, 10 to 6 on weekends. Her face tensed, eyes narrowing like a cornered animal. Are you calling me a liar? She snapped, stepping closer. Dave shifted away slightly. The woman beside him, whose name I still didn't know, looked visibly alarmed, her arms crossed tight like a shield. I'm stating facts, I replied evenly, and I have paperwork to prove it. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'd like to finish my gardening. I turned back to my shovel, but I hadn't even reached it when I heard the faint rustle of fabric, followed by a metallic click. You think you're so clever, don't you? Karen's voice had changed, lower, colder. I turned around slowly and froze. She was holding a small handgun. It was pointed directly at me. Dave gasped, stumbling back a step. Karen, what the hell are you doing? He said, voice trembling. The other board member didn't wait for an answer. She turned and sprinted halfway down the driveway, pulling out her phone with shaking hands. Karen didn't even seem to notice they were leaving her behind. I've given years of my life to this community, she said, her voice shaking, but her grip on the gun was steady. And I'm not going to let people like you come in here and tear it apart, always finding loopholes, always pushing limits. Time slowed. There was a fence between us. Some distance, some barrier, but not enough. One wrong move could escalate things even further. Karen, I said quietly, calmly, put the gun down. We can handle whatever this is without violence. Shut up, she screamed, the calm ass she always wore finally cracking wide open. Just shut up and listen for once. She stepped closer, her knuckles white around the grip of the gun. I want that fence taken down. I want the lights gone. And I want you to start following the rules, like everyone else. Or I swear you'll regret ever moving into Sycamore Heights. My pulse was pounding in my ears. But even in the chaos, one thing gave me a sliver of comfort. Mounted just under the eaves of the house, my front security camera was quietly recording every second. Karen, think about what you're doing, I said steadily, raising my hands to show I wasn't a threat. This isn't worth it. Don't throw your life away over a fence. For a second, I thought she might actually hear me. Her eyes darted to the side. Maybe finally realizing her fellow board members were gone, that she was standing alone, holding a gun, in what could only be described as aggravated assault. But then her jaw tightened. No, she said, voice flat and final. I'm tired of people ignoring the rules. I'm tired of sending letters and holding meetings that no one takes seriously. Sometimes people need to learn that there are consequences. Before she could say, or do, anything else, the sharp wail of sirens cut through the air. Her head whipped toward the street. The anger vanished, replaced with confusion. Who called the... She began, but was quickly interrupted by a booming voice over a bullhorn. This is the police. Drop your weapon immediately and put your hands where we can see them. The command echoed through the cul-de-sac. I saw neighbors peeking from their windows and front porches, stunned by the unfolding scene. Karen froze. Her face went pale as reality sank in. The gun trembled slightly in her grip, and for a moment I wasn't sure she would surrender or do something desperate. This isn't fair, she whispered, more to herself than to anyone else. I was just trying to protect the community, enforce the rules. Karen, I said gently but firmly, don't make this worse than it already is. You still have a choice. Think about your future. Something in those words must have reached her. Her shoulders slumped. The anger drained from her expression, and the gun lowered to her side. Seconds later, officers rushed into the side gate, surrounded her, and quickly disarmed and cuffed her. As they led her away, she weakly insisted, "He's the one in violation. I was just trying to protect property values." One of the officers turned to me, Do you want to press charges? I nodded. Yes, and I have everything on video. I pointed up to the security camera just beneath the roofline. The entire incident had been recorded, clear as day. The next few weeks were surreal. I gave police statements, submitted video evidence, and watched the neighborhood process what had happened. Karen was officially charged with aggravated assault, brandishing a weapon, and making criminal threats. At her initial court appearance, she was barely recognizable. Gone was a confident, tightly composed woman who ruled HOA meetings with an iron fist. In her place stood someone smaller, subdued, dressed in an orange jumpsuit, head down. At the emergency HOA meeting that followed, I presented the video footage to the full board and residents. The room fell into stunned silence. Gasps echoed as they watched Karen raise a firearm over a dispute about a fence. When the interim president announced the board's unanimous decision to remove her permanently from the HOA and ban her from serving in any leadership role again, it was met with quiet nods of agreement. No one protested. No one spoke up for her. Justice, in its own suburban way, had been served. The final blow came in court a week later, when the judge denied her bail, calling her a potential threat to the community. As she was let out of the courtroom, she glanced in my direction, her eyes locked on mine, but there was no fire left, just fear. I saw the color drain from her face as her lawyer leaned in and whispered something. I can only assume it was a number, the legal fees and the looming possibility of civil damages. For the first time since moving to Sycamore Heights, since the very first time I met her, Karen Winters was completely speechless.